Hi, I'm Amy Heinman from Peekaboo Pattern Shop. Today I'm going to show you how to sew the placket on the Declan and Denver pullovers. You can use these patterns to create either a henley or a hoodie or a polo. You could also use these placket instructions to add a placket to any of your favorite top patterns. Let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to do is to prepare our placket pieces. Using the placket pattern piece, you should have 2 in your fabric and 2 in your interfacing. Apply fusible interfacing to the wrong sides of both pieces, and then use your placket piece to transfer these markings over to the fabric. So what I normally do is just fold it on the line, and then mark along here, fold, mark again, and do that for both pieces. Next, you need to decide how you want to finish the outside edges of your placket. You can use a serger or zigzag stitch like this, or you can press the edges over like this. I'll show you what that looks like on the inside. So on this polo, I finished the outside edges of my placket by folding them under, and you can see it's completely finished. So if you're planning to wear it opened up like this, I prefer to finish the placket this way. It is a little more difficult to sew, but not much. The other option is to just finish that edge with a serger or zigzag stitch, and this is really easy assembly, I think. So you can see the edge on the inside, but if most of the time it's going to be worn buttoned, it's really not going to matter. So just decide what you like best. Then you also need to press your placket on the center line. So just folding it in half like this and press. Next, you grab the placket marking template, lay it right on top of the front of your project, lining it up at the neckline. Make sure you have it right on your pressed line so that the placket is straight, and then trace around this outside line with tailor's chalk or a fabric marking pen. And then you're going to sew right on top of this marked line. I just sewed along the marked placket opening line. Now it's time to cut the opening. You turn it this way, cut straight down the center, and then cut in towards each corner. And the piece I'm working on is just a scrap, so that's why I don't have a full front here. Your piece is going to be much bigger than this. So here's the placket opening. Now it's time to sew the plackets to the opening. So grab your 2 placket pieces. I'm going to be working with the raw edge, so the edge that's not serged or folded. I'll lay it right on top, and you'll sew this marked line to the stitching line you just sewed, stopping when you get to the bottom of the placket. And I'm going to do that on both sides. I already have one side of the placket sewn on. I'm getting ready to sew the second side. You can sew this from either side of your project. Personally, I find it easier to sew from the wrong side so that I can make sure I'm starting and stopping right at the bottom of the placket. You want to start right at the corner of where you snipped in towards the bottom of your placket opening. So put my needle down right at that corner. Take your time, make sure you have it right where you need it to be. You want to stitch forward a little bit and then backwards. Now on the other side of the placket, I started at the top and stopped at the bottom. You can do either way. So the key is to make sure you don't go past the bottom of your placket opening, or you're going to get a pucker. I have both sides of the placket sewn on. Now to check to make sure I'm not going to have problems later, I'm going to go ahead and fold my plackets and see how everything's laying. So fold it up along the lines you already pressed, and now tuck the tails inside. We're going to see how this lays. Okay, so everything's looking good. If you have a little pucker right here at the corner, go back and check to make sure that when you sewed these plackets on, you didn't sew past the bottom of the placket opening. If you went, here's the bottom of my placket opening right here. If you sew even like one stitch past this, you're gonna end up with a pucker. So go back and fix it now, because this is the easiest time to do that. Once you're happy with your placket, it's time to attach the back of your project so that we can finish the neckline. So with right sides together, just gonna sew the back piece on at the shoulder seams. Now that the back piece is sewn on, we're ready to finish the neck. Now this pattern includes options for a polo with a collar, or you can make a hoodie. It's a hoodie. Or you can sew a henley, a regular neckband, like this one. So today I'm going to go over how to sew the henley, and I'll give some tips on the others as well. So for the henley, you should already have your neckband cut. It's going to have curved ends. Fold it in half with wrong sides together and press flat. And we're going to pin it to the neckline. So you pin the center back, and your pattern piece will have a notch on it. I forgot to cut my notch. But match up that with the center back neckline. And then in front, this part that trips people up sometimes. You have to curve these raw edges up to meet the neckline. So it looks like the curve is going the wrong direction, but you just bring it up to meet the neckline, and we want this tip to meet up with the center of the placket. So here's my center line on the placket. You can see we marked that earlier, and then we pressed it as well. So I'm going to bring that tip right here and pin it in place. And you want to make sure that this seam allowance is pressed towards the placket. Get that pinned as well. And then just stretch this neckband to fit the neckline and pin it. And you'll do the same thing for the other side. So if you're doing a hoodie, you'll bring the edge of the hood up to this line. And the only thing that's different about the polo is that the collar only goes halfway into the placket. So on the polo, you can see the collar ends halfway into the placket instead of going all the way to that marked line. That way, if it's worn, snapped all the way up, the collar doesn't overlap. So we're going back to our henley, pinning the neckline. So once you get this pinned all the way around on both sides, then you're going to fold the placket back against itself on the center line so that right sides are together. So just like this, and your raw edge over here is either going to be pressed, or if you were just serged it and we're going to leave it, it'll be all the way open like that. So depending on the finish you chose. Then once you have this going all the way around, you'll sew the neckline in place using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I highly recommend basting just along this little section to make sure things don't shift out of place. The neckline is sewn, so now we're going to turn the placket right side out. Just like this. And refold the placket on the original lines you pressed, so it's going to cover the placket seam allowance. And then we're going to sew it down on both edges, starting at the bottom of the placket opening and going up to the neckline. Just sew these down. So I sewed right to the bottom of the placket opening. You're going to want to use thread that matches. I used white so you can see what's going on. And now all the seams from the placket are on the inside, except for at the very bottom of the placket, we have this little triangle. I just top stitched both sides of the placket. Everything's enclosed. So now it's time to add your buttons or snaps. So for a girl's shirt, things normally overlap right over left from the wearer's perspective. So it'll go this way. For a boy, you'll go the opposite way. I'm not actually going to add anything to this since it's just a little sample that I'm not going to keep. But here's one that has buttons done. So you're going to want to use either 2 or 3 buttons depending on how much space you want in between each. Just keep in mind at the bottom of your placket, you're going to have 3/4 inches of top stitching, so you don't want to put your bottom button too low. So here's one with buttons. If you prefer, you can also use snaps. So once you have that done, then we're just going to finish up the bottom. So you'll have this all nicely overlapped. You'll have your buttons and snaps done. Now you're going to tuck these tails inside the shirt. Get everything laying flat. Okay, so we're going to tuck the little triangle inside. Make sure everything's laying nicely with no puckers. And then you're going to flip the shirt up and sew right across the bottom of the placket opening to sew this little triangle to the placket. Make sure you don't sew it to the back of the shirt. You can move that out of the way. So let me show you that one more time. Got the shirt laying just how I want. The triangle's tucked in. The tails of the placket are tucked in. Everything's laying smoothly. Just flip the bottom of the shirt up. And now I'm going to sew right here. So I just sewed across the base of this little triangle. If this is the first time you've done this, you can baste it first to make sure you have it right and then sew over it in case you need to pull it out and do it again. So after you pull it down, everything should be laying nice and smooth. And then we're just going to sew around the bottom of the placket. So I'd normally make this box of stitching about 3/4 of an inch tall, but you can do it a little taller or a little shorter if you prefer. So after I sew a rectangle, then I like to sew through it diagonally. And you can do this once, or you can also go through diagonally both ways and make an X. And now your placket is all finished up.